however many months, what was it like to finally coach Kyler Murray?
It was exciting. Really pleased with kind of how he handled everything, how the team responded. Certainly it was a good step in the right direction. There's plenty of things to clean up, but it was a really good first step.
Is there any kind of, okay, we kind of settled down into a rhythm now that all that part is back and him being out on the field once, or do you think you're already kind of in that with him?
Yes and no. I think certainly we felt very confident in putting him out there with the rest of the team and what we were going to be able to do. But every week in this league presents a new challenge. So I think you got to start over. You got to get back in the lab. You got to make sure you're putting together a good plan. You got to make sure guys are working on improving in their areas. So that focus, I don't think, is going to change as we go through the rest of the year.
Now with week 2, do you load more into him as far as the offense goes, or what do you look for out of game 2 from game 1?
We really didn't hold anything back. I think you saw him do everything that he's done in his career, showed up at a high level, off-schedule plays, making plays with his feet, accuracy and arm strength. Really all of it. So we didn't hold a ton back from a scheme standpoint. Don't expect that to change moving forward.
Whether that was from a standpoint of play calling or communication, was there anything that surprised you that you weren't expecting? Or, I know we were told that he didn't have expectations and JG maybe did. I mean, was there anything that kind of caught you by surprise in that realm?
No, probably not. I think you see who he is in practice, who he is on Sunday, and it's impressive. I mean, the guy plays the game at a really high level, so it was nice to see those things translate. But we've seen him every day since he stepped on the field, so it was encouraging to see those in a competitive, high, stress environment to continue to show up.
You talked about how he trusted his knee, otherwise he wouldn't be out there. Well, when that first scramble, third play of the game, what was going through your head?
It's funny you say that. At no point during the game did it cross my mind, which is funny because I think in here last week, in my mind, it was going to. Like, you were going to think about it a lot more. But once the lights go on and you're calling plays, you're in the flow of the game, it really at no point crossed my mind until maybe somebody mentioned it after the game. That's probably when you think of it again. Oh, yeah, he did just come off an ACL. It sure didn't look like it when he was out there.
I know JG talked about getting some operational things cleaned up. In that realm, was it more than a normal game? Do you feel like those can get quickly cleaned up as we go here?
Yeah, I think some of that was on me. Like, some of that was on me and my communication with him. So I think certainly the more comfort we have together in terms of communication, play calling, flow of the game, would expect that to continue to improve. It's certainly an area for me that I'm always trying to get better at. So I don't think that's going to change. And certainly we had a couple hiccups there during the game. We were able to overcome most of them. But certainly need to limit those going forward, and I think our familiarity with each other helps in that area.
Paris had a bounce-back game in terms of pass protection especially. What are your thoughts on his development, especially coming back after not having as good of a previous couple games?
Yeah, I think you hit on it. He's the type of guy, his process and his work ethic has not changed throughout the entire year. So that, hey, he's a great player. He plays the game at a high level. It's not always going to be perfect, but I never expect him to stay down after a bad game or a bad performance or a bad rep. I mean, he's the same guy on the sideline no matter what happened the previous drive, and I think you see that week to week in the way that he goes out there and plays on Sunday.
What did you see in the week of practice that led to the decision at left guard to go with Carter?
I think it's, we've talked about it here. We're always going to put the 5 guys that we feel like give us the best chance to win from a communication and execution standpoint. And certainly Carter did a really nice job during the week and was excited to see him go out there and perform the way he did on Sunday.
With all the talk, new offense for Kyler, what do you think has been the biggest adjustment or biggest thing that he's had to get accustomed to with this new offense?
Yeah, I think being in the huddle, calling more plays in and out of the huddle, certainly a big part of it. It's a new language, and it's kind of and that's kind of the biggest probably transition to him. Some of the things that his brain probably hasn't flipped over completely to, like, I want to run this. Is this what it's called here? Like, that's real. And when it's like going from English to Spanish or Spanish to Italian, you're all saying the same things a lot of times, but remembering exactly how to communicate it in the language you're talking to your teammates, I think at times can be a little tricky. I think he's done a really nice job all offseason of embracing that and committing to that and working on play calling. But I think that's probably the thing that's going to continue to improve the most as he just does it more and more.
Like, the actual play call is much longer than he's ran in the past, and he's always had hand signals, whatnot. How was that process like for him on Sunday, getting the actual play from you to?
Good, and honestly, very similar to the way it was prior. Like, we didn't change that process drastically, but I thought he did a nice job of getting in and out of the huddle and making sure we were to the line with time and understanding what he needed to do at the line of scrimmage to get us in the right play, and it was good to see.
Game, obviously, James went down right before the goal line, and that was obviously part of it. when you're calling those plays, is that part of the play call, or is that a different part of?
Yes and no. It comes in the same sentence, but it's the communication about the situation, and that is, head coach to me to the quarterback, and the quarterback to the huddle. So obviously in those high leverage situations, being able to stay calm and communicate was good to see, because that's not always an easy thing to do. So it was excited that we were able to execute that the way we needed to.
What makes Trey such an effective pass catcher, and just what really stood out to you in his performance?
Yeah, I mean, pass catch, really, to me, he's a complete tight end. I think he's worked really hard over the last couple months to be that guy and to put himself in that position. Certainly in the pass game, the size, the speed, the length, the hands, you saw it all on display on Sunday. But really for us, it's something we've seen in terms of the growth of his game in general, in all areas, run blocking, pass protection, effort. Really pleased with the way he's playing.
I think some might have expected or thought he might have been under center more than he was in this game. Is that just a product of how the game went, or do you see that expanding as he plays more?
A little bit of both, and I really have no hesitations with him under center, putting him under center. He does a lot of things really well out of the gun. I think it creates some dynamics for the defense that make it hard on them. So it's more of a week-to-week, hey, who are we playing? What do we feel like lines up the best? Does that put him under center? Does that put him in the gun? It's nothing to whether it's he's good here or better there. I don't think that's really goes into my thought process.
You mentioned Carter and did well during the week. What was the thought process, I guess, generally going into the week that this would be a possibility to move him over there and start the game and play?
Yeah, I mean, I think you saw him play a little bit at the end of the Cleveland game, so certainly was happy with the reps he put forth in that game in a tough situation, tough environment, and then had a number of guys kind of in and out of the lineup, in and out of practice, so you're just shuffling guys around in general to make sure, hey, there's a lot of scenarios going into Sunday that could be happening, right, depending on who's available. So he was going to get reps at a number of different spots and thought he looked really good during the week, and that kind of was the best fit for everybody else that made it to game day to give us the best chance to win.
What was going through your head on that third down scramble towards the end of the game?
Probably just like a blank stare and a little bit of amazement, and then certainly as he started to get the corner, honestly, the first thing that as he got the edge was, and I think it was Will was running back towards the line of scrimmage, was don't block back, because obviously that's a 50-yard penalty. So that immediately crossed my mind. I'm like, oh no, here comes 3rd and 25. And then when he didn't, I couldn't tell if he got the first down or not. So like on the headset from where I was standing, I'm like, did he get the first? Because obviously if he didn't, we're in 2 minutes, it's 4th down, like we have to be on the ball. We can't clock it, right? So it's a big situation. So once he got the first, there was definitely just like a moment of a wow, and then like, all right, hey, we got to get on the ball. We got to call the next play and make sure he's ready to go.
For the offensive line, in a situation like that, when you have a quarterback that is as mobile and can get out of the pocket, what do you kind of emphasize so that you don't have those block in the backs?
I think the biggest thing, and it's been a big point of emphasis, is the play is never over. So whether you're used to a play ending at 5, not that you have an exact time clock in your head, but I think guys get in the habit of like, all right, hey, I blocked my guy this long, the ball is out, or we've moved on, or something's happened. That's never the case anymore. So I think, somebody said we had 4 plays that lasted longer than 10 seconds. So as a lineman, as a receiver, you have to assume the play is always still going. You have to keep yourself in that mindset of finish your block, continue to get open, work with the quarterback as he scrambles out of the pocket, or sometimes in the pocket. Thought he did a nice job of staying in the pocket at times and extending plays and letting guys work down the field. And that does at times put some stress on the O-line. I thought those guys did a nice job of handling it for the most part, but it's something we're going to continue to emphasize.
Is that also the case kind of the holding penalties, like you got to, the way he operates, that you guys have to be more aware of when to release and kind of all that?
Absolutely. I think that's always a struggle with a mobile quarterback, especially someone who can get out of the pocket as effectively and as quickly as he does. It's that kind of, oh, there you go. Like it just happens a tick quicker. The play lasts longer. And if you've got your hands in the wrong place or you're not using the proper technique, you can certainly get called.
Without taking away from the other quarterbacks or players that have stepped up first half of the season, mostly due to injury, when you're looking at tape and evaluating this game, when you've now mostly, with the exception of some offensive line players, mostly healthy, are you evaluating this play differently of this is what we can really be when we have our starters in at quarterback and running back?
I don't know if I'd say. I think the focus for us when we look at tape is, again, what do we do well and where can we improve? And that's collectively and individually, regardless of who's out there. I think that's the key to being a good team. We're not going to be healthy the rest of the year, and I wish we were. It'd be great if we are. It's not likely. So I think focusing on making sure that everyone's doing their job at a high level, continuing to learn from the reps they're not getting, making sure they're ready for the reps they're going to get, and putting the best 11 out there, I think has got to be the focus in everything we do, kind of regardless of, hey, we had a good game, we played well, these guys stepped up. Well, next game we're going to need different guys to step up and other guys to play at a high level, and I think that has to continue to be the focus as you go through the NFL season.
Jonathan mentioned yesterday how you come in every week with this big review of basically everything from the game. How was that for you, self-scouting and self-aware, obviously, of here's areas that can improve or whatever it might be?
That's a big part of my process. And as you look at it, like as a coach, it's like, all right, I evaluate the game, the plan, the matchups, everything we did that went into Sunday. Did I do it well? Here's where I could have been better. Here's where I didn't do it well enough, and why. So that, one, we may play these people again, so we need to have answers there. And then two, if I'm not working to make myself better, I'm not doing exactly what I'm asking the players to do every day they come in the building. So I think it's just a big part of, hey, how can I be better at my job? How can I be more prepared? How can I put them in a better situation? That's a big part of what that sheet is. And certainly I give that to JG, and honestly, I ask his opinion on it. And say, hey, you were on the headset, you were part of the game planning, you were part of the process. Is there anything you saw that you're like, I think we needed a little more here, a little less there. I thought that was really good, didn't like this as much. And I think those conversations and being to self-evaluate are such a big part of making sure you're getting the best version of yourself.
You put down all that all worked, or is the ones that worked pretty
It hasn't yet. If it ever does, I'll let you know. But no, and I say that to the players too. Guys get down on themselves when they miss a player, and I say, hey, if you ever had a perfect game and we have nothing to correct, let me know. Like, we'll be in the Hall of Fame at that point. Like, it's not going to happen. But that's the reality, and that's what you're striving for, because the closer you get, the better you're going to be as a player, the better you're going to be as a team. So I think that's the goal. But no, at no point on that sheet is it blank.
How did that process come about?
Just look, and I watched a lot of other guys do it. And I'm very fortunate to be around some really good coordinators, some really good coaches that I think were very good self-evaluators and very self-aware in terms of their process, in terms of what they were trying to accomplish. So kind of taking a little bit of everybody's and then making it my own to make sure that I understand it and can get the most out of it.
What kind of teammate and leader has Kyler been since he's kind of not been back? What guys during the regular season?
I think so. Just from kind of week one on, I think he's done a really nice job of kind of being, like not the backup quarterback, obviously, but like being in that role of trying to provide advice, trying to help guys with the game plan, trying to give his 2 cents when it makes sense, and staying engaged and being a part of it, which I think helped his transition back on the field, because a lot of times that's what, like, the 2 is doing that, and the 2 has to do that, and then the 2's playing all of a sudden. And if you're doing that at a high level, you're going to be intertwined with your teammates. You're going to feel like you're a part of it, so that when you do step back on the field, it's not like day one. It's like, hey, I've been doing this. I've been a part of this. I think it's been fun to see. I think he's gotten a lot out of it. I know it's hard when you're like, God, I want to be out there, and I know I can be out there, and I'm close. But I thought he did a really nice job of that, because that's not always an easy role.
What's his presence like in the locker room? Does he have that cachet of the number one quarterback that you've maybe seen throughout your career?
Yeah, I think he certainly does. Just in terms of the way he carries himself, the way he interacts with his teammates, certainly the way he plays on the field. I mean, you saw his energy and his passion there, throughout the game. I think guys feed off that. There's the line. Players like good players, and he's a phenomenal player, but he's also a great teammate. He's there to pick guys up. He's there to put his arm around them. So it's been fun. As long as I've been here, I think he's done a really nice job of that.
From a teaching standpoint, is there a difference between player development between rookies and veterans, and what's the message to the veterans in terms of making them better?
In terms of play, honestly, the message is it's pretty much the same, and it talks back to the sheet. It's where have you done things well, where are your deficiencies, and how do we work on those? Like you look at a guy like Calvin Beachum. I mean, he's been in the league how many years? And 2 weeks ago came up and said, hey, where are my areas? What are the 1 or 2 things that I can be better? And I said, hey, it's going to be this and this, and if you can improve in this area, you're going to go out and play at a higher level in this offense. And he took that to heart, and you can see him pre-practice, during practice, working on that specific area to say, hey, if I really do this, I can take my game just a little bit further. And I think that really, from the day you enter the league until the day you retire, I don't think that mindset really changes.
Sunday's tush-push wasn't the first time we've seen Clayton go in for a play. To use your backup quarterback in that type of role, is that something you learned along from some coach to get here, or you just kind of envisioned that role for him when you started working with him this offseason?
A little bit of everything. I think some of it's just from watching other people around the league. Some of it's making sure that you're using everybody who's got a jersey on Sunday can help us win a football game. And so whatever they do to provide that, I think is really important. And certainly for Clayton, that was in that role on Sunday, which was great to see. And he went out and executed, which was awesome. But that's true of everybody who's dressed. They got to be ready. They all have a role, and they got to be ready to go out and execute.
JG said that Clayton bounced back really well during the practice week. What did you see from what did you see in his response, really?
And I think it was something we talked about right after the game. He was the same guy. Walked out on the field on Wednesday, ready to go, motivated, excited to play football. You know, arguably had one of his best weeks of practice since we've been here. So really encouraging for us as a staff, as a team. Like, hey, wasn't our best game, wasn't his best game, but he's got things to improve on. He's going to come out with a lot of energy and go get better, and I think he did that last week.
Do you see that as a good role for him too, what he did on Sunday, certainly because of his size, and especially on those really close yardage to goes?
Yeah, and again, we're going to use him in a lot of different situations depending on how the game plays out. So, got to keep people on their toes on that one.
When it comes to BJ, the last couple of weeks he seems to have taken a next step. What have you seen out of just his growth recently?
Yeah, I think every area of his game is slowly improving throughout the year. This past game I thought it was his most complete game as far as, obviously everyone saw the sacks, he rushed well, but in other aspects, in coverage, he did a really good job. And, you know, without really diving into his details of what that was on the tape, you know, you didn't necessarily see it on the television, but he did a good job of getting on the right matches and smothering his coverage. He did really good in the run game. You know, that's a really good run offense. We just played with some good offensive tackles, and I thought he did a good job setting the edges in the run game. So, complete game. That was exciting. He's got to continue to build on that, improve on that.
Going off that a little bit, he said yesterday before every game you come up to him and you say, play free. What does playing free really look like?
Yeah, I talk about that a lot with the entire defense. To me, that starts with day one when we put everything in. It's rules, not memorization. And you never want guys to be out there trying to be perfect with whatever that is, fits, matches, all that stuff as far as memorizing this is how this fits versus this. I'd rather them, hey, let me go apply my rules so I can go out there and play free and problem solve. And I think what you get with playing free is you get a more violent group, and you get a group that really just flies around and attacks football. So, you know, that's one thing, because I always say that to BJ specifically because I know he's a little bit of a perfectionist, and I want him to just let it go. You know, a minus is okay, you know, but a fast, violent player, that's going to help win us the game. So, yeah, that's why I always kind of remind him in his head, go play free.
With his increased snaps, I mean, is that something he's been trending towards? Was that a one-off because of the matchup? Like, do you see him continuing to be in that role where he's getting?
Yeah, you know, I think obviously he kind of had a slower start to the season, being injured and missing most of off-season program and training camp. So we've been slowly building him to that point, but it kind of goes into, you know, we carry a lot of outside linebackers on game day, and you really want a rotation of all those guys. You know, I feel great with all those guys going in there and getting their touches, and you really want to come away from those games relatively equal in those with their snaps, depending on the game too, obviously, right? And you might go into the game with a certain plan, and certain things in the game dictated it to where some guys got more than the others, but I'd expect all those guys to be very much, you know, kind of equal amount in the mix, with a week-to-week variation of certain roles changing depending on the opponent or depending on how they've been playing a certain way. But yeah, you want to keep that room relatively fresh.
If you've got a guy in here, just throwing a name out there, Hassan Reddick, for instance, does that change how you guys look at that rotation? Like if you get a upper echelon type rusher?
Yeah, you know, I think overall in the front, you want to keep those guys fresh. It's playing in the trenches is not something you can play every snap. It's really, you don't even want to be playing 80% of those snaps. You want those guys to be knocking the line of scrimmage back. You want those guys to be rushing fresh. So, yeah, no matter what, I think you want to keep those rotations.
How much does it help when a guy like BJ, who's getting more snaps, getting more in a rhythm and having them more opportunities?
Yeah, there's definitely rhythm to playing. I think certain positions maybe require more rhythm than others. I don't think that rhythm has ever been an issue for those guys up front rotating. I think you definitely want them to all kind of get some kind of rhythm early on, because I think once you get those pads cracking at your initial plays, as long as you're not out for an extended period of time, those guys will have no problem finding their rhythm when they get in there.
How much has his run defense improved, BJ? He had 8 tackles in the game.
Has BJ's run defense improved?
Has it improved? That was sort of the knock on him coming out of the draft, right?
Yeah, it's gotten, I wouldn't say that was his knock, but he's improved in that area. I was pleased with his pad level and his leg drive on contact. And, you know, BJ's very naturally gifted. He's got very long arms. So when he gets extension, he gets underneath people, he's able to play his gap, peek, find the ball, shed, and get off and make plays. So, yeah, he's going to continue improving that run area as well.
When it comes to DPI and how each crew calls it, what are the keys that you are working on in practice with your players when it seems like each crew calls it a little different?
Yeah, I mean, we can control. There's nothing you can do about penalties or pass interference. I think the key is that you play with good technique. The better technique you play with, the less chance you get a DPI or a defensive holding. So we don't necessarily focus on penalties or avoiding penalties, but if you play with good technique, a lot of times you're going to be clean throughout the down. So that's really more of our focus when it comes to our preparation process.
The second half adjustments, you know, Atlanta had like -2 yards in that third quarter. You know, they ran it 41 times, threw it just 21. But in the second, at halftime, was there a certain approach, you know, or adjustment you made?
Yeah, there was a few adjustments. I would say that call sheet got a little scribbled on, maybe more than most games, because, you know, hats off to them. They're a hard team to prepare for. And no matter what you think you want to do going into the game, you're going to have to be able to adjust, because they're able to create things that they're probably getting to the same concepts that they know, and it's simple execution for their guys, but to you it feels like there's a lot going on. And so we had to make a few adjustments, you know, kind of in all aspects of the game plan, and players did a really good job of going out there and executing it, and, you know, we did a good job in that third quarter.
I'm talking about BJ. Is the player development side for you and the staff, is that kind of the fun part? And I guess, is there a difference between how you do that with rookies and veterans?
I wouldn't say there's a difference with how you do it with rookies and veterans, but yeah, that is, to me, that's, I guess every coach is different, but that is ultimately why you get into this profession, is to improve the player, right, and try to get the player to hit their ceiling. So the player development is critical, and it can get overlooked at times once you get going during the season. It's easy to say, okay, here we go, here's this next week, this is the opponent, and you're so lasered in on what's the schematic stuff that we have to do against this team coming up, and you forget about the development of your own team. And that's ultimately what's going to win games. It's those players that are improving their execution of your scheme, the players that are improving their technique. And so I actually hit it on it. I'm happy you asked that question. I hit on it with my staff yesterday of, hey, you know, we got, you know, 2 months left in the regular season here. We need to really hone in on and even go the extra mile to how can we continue to get our guys better and be there to serve our players with whatever they need to continue to improve their game. Because ultimately, whatever we do schematically, that's going to, you know, swing it one way or the other, whether or not it's a good scheme slightly, but ultimately what the most important thing is that the players are playing their game at a high level, and we're putting them in position to do so. So that's a critical piece. Veteran, rookie, doesn't matter. It can look different by guy. Certain aspects of their game that they need to improve on, then you maybe need to work on those. And whether that's, you know, out on the practice field stuff or in the meeting room, whatever that is, each guy might require a little bit of different, what they need to work on, how they need to improve their learning process, anything like that. But that is something that we take very serious, and we make sure that we lock in on at all points in the year, not just in the off season.
How do you get guys better when you are in that kind of rinse, wash, repeat routine of the season, preparing for teams, and then you only have so much individual time?
Yeah. Yeah, you know, I think, you know, starting in the meeting room, you have to be very cognizant of continuing to talk about the things that you want that the defense to look like. Whether that's as a defense as a whole, we talk about playing with motor and violence, we talk about taking the ball away, or if it's the details of each position's fundamentals or execution of the scheme. you have to hammer it home in the meeting room. As easy as it is to let that slip and be like, yeah, of course, you know that. We talked about that to nauseum and during training camp, but those details can't slip in the meeting room. And so you got to hammer them home in the meeting room. They got to get hammered home on the practice field. The individual has to continue to improve the player. And then once you get into the practice, that stuff has to show up when you're going team periods and 7-on-7 periods. So, I mean, it's a continuous, conscious effort to be obsessed with those details, I think is the key in every aspect of the preparation throughout the day.
How impressed are you with Stroud? And if you didn't know he was a rookie, watching him, would you not think he was a rookie? Yeah, no, he is. He deserves to be in that MVP race. I know that kind of hit recently of, you know, C.J. Stroud has entered that, and he deserves to be because he is playing at a very high level, and you can see this guy's going to be a really good player for a long time in this league. Just his ability to put the ball accurately where it needs to be continuously. He's got great arm strength. He can get the ball out on time. If it's not there, he knows how to get to his check down. He knows when it's time to throw it away. He doesn't put the ball at harm's risk. If he needs to escape and improvise, he can do that, and he can still keep his eyes down the field and make plays. So he doesn't look anything like a rookie quarterback. He looks like a veteran that knows where he wants to go with the football. And when he knows where he wants to go with the football, he puts it right on the money. And there's a reason that they're top of the league in explosive passes. It's because he knows where to go with the football. They're doing a great job of scheming people open, and he's putting it there. And they're also top in the league in yards after catch. And that's, attribute that to his accuracy throwing the football, because whether it's an intermediate pass or they are taking a shot down the field, he's hitting guys in stride, and it's turning big plays into, touchdown, huge plays. So very impressed. Obviously, before I turned on the tape, I was just kind of hearing the noise, but it's real. He's a really good player. Who are some of those other guys? You're saying, I guess what you're saying is they have a lot of different guys.
Their skill, absolutely. They got. Well, I think what's so great about what their offense right now is that they're so spread out with their skill players. They're deep. Both running backs, Pierce. Now he is a violent runner. I'm a fan of the way he runs the football, except for when he's got to go against us. But you better make sure you get population of the ball. And then, Singletary's obviously he had a great game last week. He can make people miss, and he can create explosive runs off of that. And then I think, Nico Collins is just continuing to climb up in his career. He's a really good X receiver. He can win on the backside. And then Tank Dell is an explosive player. So they got a good player in that, and then it continues to go on. Like Dalton Schultz, established tight end in this league. Mechie, it's good to see him back and playing, and he's a really good receiver. Noah Brown is producing right now, and he produced when he was in Dallas too. But you're really seeing him continue to improve his game too. So they're deep. They do a great job of, Bobby Sloak is doing a tremendous job of running a really good system and putting his own spin on it. They're doing a great job of scheming guys open, and then Stroud is also doing a great job of putting the ball where it needs to go, and those skill guys get the ball in their hand, and they're dangerous. So there's a reason they're clicking right now on offense.
Do you ask Paris Johnson, knowing how he blocked for him at Ohio State, do you go across to the offensive side of the meeting room and say to him, what are some of the tendencies that might not pop on film?
Yeah, you always use, there's connections throughout the whole building. So whether that's coaches or players, you definitely try to steal those things throughout the week. That's a good one with Paris, obviously. Hey, Paris, let me know what bothers CJ here. Help me out here. But yeah, that's something you want to do week to week. I think it probably happens around the NFL a lot. There's so much carryover. I think every game you probably have people on the other team that there's connections within the building to those people, and you try to gather as much of that information as you can if it'll help you.
When you're getting to that end of game situation and you know that the team is essentially playing for the field goal so that the time runs out, do you get any nerves there knowing that it's all going to be resting on that one play, because that's kind of how it's setting up?
You try not to. I mean, there's a human element to all the things that can happen there. You know, it worked out. Guys performed how we hoped they would, but it can get interesting at times.
George's return, I mean, what were you thinking at that point when he bounced off that block?
Yeah, well, I was actually, my eyes were somewhere else. A lot of times during those plays, I'm not following the ball, right? So, like, you're looking at blocks or how'd they play that one, or you're trying to gain as much information as you can. Really, my thought process was, it's about a week ago, about now, he texted me and said, can we put in this return? He saw something on tape, and, you know, generally speaking, when a guy's like, hey, I see this, you know, can we put it in? And we weren't quite done with the game plan, you know, at that point, and just kind of flipped some stuff around. And but, yeah, he had the right idea, and it was a good play for us.
How often are the players looking at the opposing special teams tapes and texting you saying, hey, this is something that we should implement?
It happens usually on a weekly basis in some aspect of it. Maybe it's a return. Maybe it's how, you know, somebody on a rush team wants to attack a block. Sometimes it's, I mean, I've gotten some wild suggestions over the years. So you don't implement them all, but you know, the good thing is that, you know, guys are doing their preparation stuff, and you know, when they're invested like that, generally speaking, you're going to get better results.
At the end of the game, so that it was set up that way for the kick, for the field goal to be left instead of down the middle. Is that's where Matt likes it? That can vary from game to game. We're indoors there, right? So, like, the weather isn't going to factor in. The surface, whether it's turf or it's grass, is it late in the year? You know, there's that one corner in Kansas City that doesn't see sun from like November to March. All of those things kind of factor in, but it was 2010. John Casey told me, he was the kicker in Carolina at the time, he said 90% or 95% of my kicks always have been from a hash. So I don't ever want to kick from the middle in a must-get situation. So that's the attitude that a lot of guys have, you know, just because it's more common. You know, it changed, that started to kind of show itself when the extra point moved back. You know, do you put on the left hash, you put on the right hash? There's games I've been in where, you know, he'll say either hash, and we might have had 2 injuries on one side of our field goal team, and it's like, okay, let's put it over there because those guys have a better chance of executing because they've had more reps. So, you know, that was the idea on that one. But Matt's going to kick it from wherever. You know, in that tight, you know, I'm sure he would have been fine with wherever it went.
There has to be a certain amount of comfort knowing that you guys, when you're getting the ball back with 2.5 minutes, a game-winning drive, I mean, obviously you went a lot further, but you only had to go so far knowing that Matt has got such great range. I would assume there's a certain comfort there.
It's better than the alternative. Yeah, I mean, offensively you're trying to get to a certain spot, and within a drive at the end of a game, the first line is, would we even attempt it? Okay, so you figure out where that's at. The next line becomes, where do you feel like he's definitely got the leg for it? And then, you know, other than that, you know, how those things factor in, because I think the line of gain on one of those was like the plus 48, or, you know, if it gets to 4th and 2 from the 50, now what happens? Sure, I've seen him hit from 70, but at the same time, it's like it's 4th and 2, and there's clock left, so there's a lot of factors that go into it.
What was his line on Sunday?
I'm not sure. We never found out.
Did you ask him?
Yes, we have those conversations. Yeah.
You've mentioned often about kickers or whatever it is, how they'll go from team to team, get an opportunity here, an opportunity there. And the guy coming in this week that you'll be facing obviously had the opportunity here and it didn't go well. And then it went great for him Sunday. When you see that for a guy you only knew for a couple of weeks, what is that? You know, how do you feel about that?
Well, I think all players improve from their experiences. And, speaking of Matt, he goes in there, right, and he has a good first game, hits the game winner. He's building on that experience with us from a year ago where he comes in midseason and has an opportunity there. So, he is very, very talented, and obviously had the good results this past week, and, look forward to playing against him.
Along those lines, how difficult is it sometimes when you're looking for a kicker? You get 3-4 guys in, whatever.
Sure.
Pick the one that does the best, but you still never know what's going to happen on game day.
You never know what's going to happen on game day. And, I've been a part of workouts in the past where, are you just looking at the workout? And if you do, you're kind of not taking into consideration whatever the profile is, like what's the background? Are you playing in weather? Are you playing inside? Is there familiarity with the stadium? There's a ton of factors. I don't think you can always just go off of a workout, but, it has to be the most recent information that you got, because you're seeing it live, so it certainly weighs in.
I guess surely that end of the game situation is really so much different than the rest of the game. How will a guy react to that when he maybe hasn't done it before?
You just don't know. I mean, until you see and experience those things, it's hard to know for sure how it's going to go.